Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you locally by Caesars Entertainment. Group of Atlantic City, come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long at the Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harris Resort Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. I'm Mike Hill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. We're at the ShopRite LPGA Classic, where you can stop out this weekend and see the event for yourself live. If you've never been on out here, I encourage you to do so. And then you can tell me next time, hey, it wasn't worth my time. I think it will be. You'll have a great time. There's a ton of things to do out here. But this Sunday at 1 o'clock, I don't want to say the season is on the line, obviously, but a loss here, the Eagles would fall to 1-3. And Dallas this weekend, they play Carolina. Washington has got a tough matchup this weekend. They are on the road and taking on – actually, no, they're playing the Falcons. The Giants have the tougher matchup. They're down in New Orleans. So all four NFC East teams in play. We'll talk a little bit about it. We'll get a thought on all those games. But first, Andrew Dicecco from the Inside the Birds podcast. He joins me right now here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN with another edition of Football at 4 on the Happy Hour Friday. Andrew, what's up, man?
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
All is good. Happy Hour Friday. You know, we got that good vibe going on. And obviously, I don't know if it's a good vibe. The Chiefs are in town. Andy Reid is here. And on the surface, let me get your first thoughts on this Chiefs team. 1-2, 2 straight losses. To you, is that a factor in this game that this is a big game for the Chiefs? I mean, they obviously can't fall to 1-3 with the two teams playing each other tonight. One of those teams on Monday night, one of those teams are going to win. A Chiefs loss here, if the Raiders win, could put them, way behind the 8 ball here. So does that make this game a lot more challenging for Philadelphia?
Yeah, it does in a way because you're getting an angry Kansas City team who is clearly more talented than their record would indicate. I know the old saying is you are what your record is, but it really, I mean, they have an explosive offense. Their defense has not been as opportunistic as it has been in the past. You usually get to see the turnover laden Kansas City defense play complementary football. But this hasn't been the case this year. So I think that they'll be able to get back on track. They have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. This is a good get-right week, I would say, for the Kansas City Chiefs coming into Philadelphia off of a team in the Eagles that's reeling on both offense and defense. So we'll see how it goes. But, I mean, you have to like the Kansas City Chiefs' chances this week against the Eagles.
Yeah, we'll look at some of the things that we like about them, but you mentioned turnovers, and obviously you wrote about this over at Inside the Birds. The Eagles' defense, they were playing well for 2 weeks, and then last week it was almost like they lost their bearings. It was like they put tape on the dam, and all of a sudden that water pressure just kind of got out of the way. But on top of the fact that they didn't play well Monday night, they're also not creating turnovers, and you wonder if they are going to have an inability to do that. What kind of defense does this team have if they can't turn the ball over?
Well, it's a defense that they've adopted a bend but don't break philosophy. However, they can only bend so many times before they eventually break. The offense has to provide that complementary aspect if the defense is doing their job. I mean, for the most part, on Monday night, they did do their job. They had two goal line stands. They spotted them. They got them on the board early. But the offense needs to be able to play complementary football. Otherwise, if the Eagles defense doesn't get a turnover or two down the stretch here, that with that murderer's row schedule that they're facing, it's going to be pretty damning, and it could quickly spiral out of control. They do have a number of pieces there, Mike. I wrote about it. They have Anthony Harris, who in 2019 led the league in interceptions with 6. Steven Nelson's a pretty tough, hard-nosed player, but he also had 9 pass breakups last year, 2 interceptions. And, of course, Darius Slay's there as well. So they do have the personnel to be able to, get their hands on some footballs and take it away. They've had some pass breakups, but they've had a lot of opportunities that they've missed. When your offense is stalling as frequently as the Eagles is, you need to really come up with some of these turnovers if you want to stay in these games against some of these, superior opponents.
Yeah, and we would say the Chiefs are obviously a superior opponent, but I will say, Andrew, there's some weaknesses on the defense, and we know one of them is they don't stop the run. Now, conversely, last week Nick Sirianni called 3 runs. But if they want to win, is it imperative for Nick Sirianni to turn around and hand that ball off this week?
No question about it. And I mentioned this on my fantasy football show. I was talking to Jeff, and I said, I like Miles Sanders this week as a play because I think that Nick Sirianni may even overcorrect his mistake from last week in not giving Miles Sanders the ball. Really lean on him early, especially to get the offense settled in. He may even get involved in the passing game, I would think, to get Jalen Hurts settled into the flow of the game. And I think that you're going to see him be a primary component to the offense this week. And he really needs to be. There's going to be opportunities there to run the football. You got to do it early. You want to keep that explosive Kansas City Chiefs offense off the field as much as possible. And Miles Sanders has been productive when he's gotten the ball this year. So I think it's imperative to get him rolling early and go from there.
Yeah, we know the injuries on the Eagles' offensive line, but, last year they had injuries. Do you feel they're better equipped this time around? Obviously, they announced today that Mailata's not going to play. They haven't said what they're going to do at the guard spots. I would imagine, Andrew, they're going to play Dickerson at left guard, maybe. I don't know. I mean, they haven't really given any indication, but my reasoning is when Brooks returns, Dickerson is probably going to be the guy that sticks, so why not put him where you're going to play him, when Brooks comes back, but we don't know what they're going to do there. But it feels that even though there's 3 spots, that they're more equipped this time to handle it than they were last year.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of that has to do with having a guy like Andre Dillard available to step in and play left tackle in the absence of a Jordan Mailata. And we mentioned the players like a Nate Herbig that had experience. Jack Driscoll could possibly become a factor here either this week or in the coming weeks. These are guys that played a lot of snaps for the Eagles last year out of necessity, so you're not exactly throwing someone in there and asking them to be forged by fire, and then you have to endure the growing pains that you typically do with a young player. These guys have they have some snaps under their belt, so I think they are better equipped to handle this situation, this adversity, and navigate through that much easier than they did last year, which was quite turbulent.
Yeah, I know that. Now, where is the strength of the Kansas City defense? They don't stop the run very well, and if you're going to throw the ball against it, we know Tyrann Mathieu has had a couple of picks already. So it seems that if Nick Sirianni decides, I'm not running the ball, that's just not who we are. Are they beatable in the pass game?
Absolutely, over the middle of the field. Their linebackers, Nick Bolton and Anthony Hitchens. They're pretty good coming downhill, but I think laterally there's going to be they lack the range to really keep up with a lot of these running backs and tight ends, and their fluidity and coverage isn't necessarily what you would look for from your linebacker. So I do think, we seem to mention this every week, but Dallas Goedert has a chance to get going this week. He had 66 yards last week. If you're going to abandon the run again, you have to start by working through the field and taking what they're giving you, because he's going to have a chance to work the seams there. Also, their cornerback situation, they have 2 corners in L'Jarius Sneed, who I do like, was a 4th-round pick in 2020, has some decent size, and then they have a journeyman on the other side, Travarius Ward. So I think there will be opportunities to strike deep. I think Quez Watkins, again, will have an opportunity to get behind the secondary. They're not overly imposing. I mean, outside of Tyrann Mathieu, who could do everything, their secondary is also beatable. I think what I really like what they have is their edge rushers in Chris Jones and Frank Clark. But outside of that, it's a relatively ordinary defense. They have some different pieces on the back end, and Juan Thornhill, the safety, and Tyrann Mathieu, and they have L'Jarius Sneed, who's an ascending young corner, in my opinion. But overall, Mike, the Eagles will have a chance to put points on the board if they stick to the script and fold it sort of like they did in Week 1 with the Falcons, and don't try to get too greedy off the bat like they did on Monday night.
Well, Andrew, I think we both can agree. Like, if I say to you, Jalen Hurts is not going to get into a shootout and win against Patrick Mahomes. So if the Eagles, offensively, if they want to win this game, they're going to have to make it kind of a sloppy, run the ball, short ball. You mentioned Quez Watkins. I'd like to see. I love the game that Sirianni called in week one. I thought he did a great job of getting the ball to his playmakers in spots, and he's just completely got away from that. I can't understand why. If you watch that game against Atlanta, he goes away from that. But for whatever reason, he's decided to take more shots down the field. And as you just indicated, they're not getting the tight ends involved. They're not running the ball all that much, which I guess how much is that kind of snowballed down to the way Hurts has played? Because he played really well in week one. Why'd they get away from what he did well?
I think the opponent really had a lot to do with it. I think the way the score was sort of playing out dictated their approach, and I think they never really felt like they were in it on Monday night. So I think that you sort of felt that collective panic throughout the whole sideline, and the fact that you're asking a young player who is making his 7th NFL start, Jalen Hurts, hey, go out there and win the game for us. This is on you. This is, and they had him just drop back and uncork a lot of deep passes, and really there was never really a rhyme or reason or any sort of a flow to the offense. They every week they've gotten gradually further and further away from their recipe that was so successful in week one, and they had that game in full control. And was it a gaudy down the field, take your shots? No, it was more of a horizontal offense where you're putting the ball in your playmakers' hands and letting them do damage after the catch. I don't know if that's necessarily going to work against the Kansas City team. I think you have to take your shot plays when they're there, because this is such a they don't give you there's not a lot of margin for error against this team because they put up points in bunches. So you need to do what works, but also get a guy like Quez Watkins on a Travarius Ward, and get a Dallas guy to work in the safety on a guy like Daniel Sorensen, who is a very savvy football player, but not particularly athletic. There's going to be an opportunity to make him miss in space and make him beat you there. So there will be opportunities. They just need to pick their spots and exploit some of these matchups.
Yeah, Andrew Dicecco, Football at 4. Great stuff on the breakdowns on that side of the ball. Let's look at what you think of Dillard the other night. A lot of people kind of have their eyes on him. By all accounts, he played pretty well. What you see from Andre Dillard, and what kind of matchup does he have this week?
Yeah, he was. It actually surprised me, Mike, because you didn't really hear his name until later in the game. I thought he acquitted himself relatively well. It was a statement game for Andre Dillard, because once Joey Mailata's back, this is his most recent film. He didn't play at all last season. He didn't look he looked very inconsistent, to say the least, as a rookie. So this is almost like an audition for him. So if you're a team that's looking to acquire his services, or you're trying to market yourself as a starting caliber left tackle in this league, well, guess what? You have decent film to work off of from last week. This week he's going to be going against a guy in Frank Clark, who is a pretty decent pass rusher. So this is a chance to really put your stamp on that position and make yourself known as someone who can play who can be a full season starter at left tackle. It's not going to be here in Philadelphia, obviously,
right,
but there's going to be an opportunity here to really prove your worth here.
Yep, that's a good point. And obviously Mailata's out another week now. They're getting Rodney McLeod back this week. Sirianni wanted to kind of say, well, competitive reasons, but we're not going to ditch it out. But yeah, he's going to play, and getting him back couldn't have come at a better time because they lost Wallace last week, so they needed to get McLeod back. What does he add to the defense?
A smart, tough veteran presence on the back end that can help guys get guys lined up. I think he's a decent downhill player. He's just a field general on the back end, and you need one every level. You need one of those guys at every level. Brandon Graham it started and ended with Brandon Graham on the line, but now you have a guy like Fletcher Cox stepping up and Javon Hargrave. But on the back end, you have that vocal leader, Rodney McLeod. He's been around for quite a while. And I think he just has such he's just a presence back there that you really need. And we've seen him produce at a high level before. So it's going to provide some stability there for sure. Yeah. And you really get Marcus Epps there as the third safety, which is what he's best acquitted at. There's going to be a role for him. It's going to be a very, a brief, limited role this time, but I think that he's better off playing that third safety role and taking on a more prominent role on special teams and not being miscast as a starter. So it's really going to benefit the back end in many ways.
All right, so obviously the high-powered offense of the Chiefs, that's something that their defense doesn't run the ball all that well. I know a lot of people would say, what's that one thing that Philly can do? If it's, defensively, on the defensive side of the ball, who's the guy? I mean, Kelsey, Hill, I feel like the matchups this is not a good matchup for them. So who's the guy that they need to worry about the most?
Well, here, I'll throw you one that's not so obvious. And I mentioned Steve Nelson versus CeeDee Lamb, and early on in the game, CeeDee Lamb beat him for a 44-yard pass. And I thought back to our conversation, and I think this week, similarly, Mike, you might see a guy like Mecole Hardman take advantage of those same deficiencies in Steve Nelson's game, whereas he's a tough, sturdy, physical perimeter player, but he doesn't have that long speed, and he's not overly fluid. So Mecole Hardman's been bottled up this season. He's only averaging 9.7 yards a catch. That's very uncharacteristic for him. He's a down the field threat and has that electric speed. I think this week you're going to see him take advantage of an Eagles secondary that doesn't run particularly well, and I think that he's going to be a player to watch.
Yeah, I like that's a good one. You pulled out a good one there. Because you're right. Most people think of Hill, Kelsey, obviously Mahomes, but they got weapons all over. Pringle, he had a big catch early in the season.
Yeah, Demarcus Robinson, too.
Yep, they've got a ton of weapons. We'll see how the Eagles match up with them. The injury report, clean for Philadelphia outside of Mailata. So they're going to be at, obviously as much health as they can. No Brooks, no Sayamala. But for the guys who are available, the only guy who will not play is Jordan Mailata. So everybody else, and Brandon Graham, obviously, is out for the season. What do you think of what they're doing? I guess they're using Kerrigan a lot with his hand in the ground, and he doesn't seem to be making an impact at all.
Yeah, he's been virtually invisible, Mike, through the first three games. I think you need to see less Ryan Kerrigan and more Josh Sweat. Of course, you need to see more Josh Sweat he's the Eagles' best pure pass rusher, even with the healthy Brandon Graham. But I would also say that you need to see Derek Barnett's still got to be out there. And I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more of Teron Jackson. He played a little bit last week. You get him a little bit of snaps too, have him sort of platoon with Kerrigan, because he's been pretty invisible against the run and the pass. So you have to wonder a little bit what he has left and what he's really able to provide. I think those snaps would be a little bit more beneficial to a younger player like even a Milton Williams playing some end there than it would be to Ryan Kerrigan if you're not getting that production.
That's a good name, Milton Williams, who I think started last week over Josh Sweat, which whoever starts the game doesn't really matter as much. But I think Sweat, correct me if I'm wrong, got about the most snaps he's had. I think he played the highest percentage of snaps that he ever played, right?
Yeah, he did. And then another interesting note was that Patrick Johnson started at linebacker. So like you said, it doesn't necessarily – I think he played 28 snaps in the game. But it was noteworthy that he sort of leapfrogged Jannard Avery in that Sam role.
All right, Andrew Dicecco, your thoughts and pick for Sunday. Eagles, Chiefs, it's in Philadelphia. 1-2 Chiefs, 1-2 Philadelphia. Who you got?
Oh, man, this is tough. I think I have a hard time thinking that the Chiefs are going to go and put up another clunker and go 1-3. I'm taking Kansas City to win this game. We'll say 34-20.
34-20, Kansas City. That's Andrew Dicecco's pick. InsideTheBirds.com, the Inside the Birds podcast, the pregame show, and, of course, the guys during football at 4. We'll recap it on Monday with Jeff Mosher. Andrew's back on Tuesday. Andrew, have a great rest of your weekend, man.
Thanks a lot, Mike. You too.
All right, Andrew Dicecco here on the Sports Bash. Football at 4 is brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City, Wild Wild West, Harrah's Resort, Tropicana. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com to get the ultimate sports destination all season long.